Welcome to the Men's Collective podcast. In this space, we keep the conversations real, inspiring, and challenging you to become the man you are destined to be. Your family needs you to be better. Your friends need you to be better. We need you to be better. We are your hosts, the AverageJoes. Gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Men's Collective podcast with your host, the AverageJoes. Like we say every week, your reviews, likes, and subscriptions to our channels and our socials is what makes this very podcast reach more and more people. So please jump online, subscribe, and leave a 5-star review. It really does work wonders for us here. More importantly, make sure you get along to your local AJ's meetup this week. Again, jump online to www.averagejoes.net.au or our Facebook and Instagram to see where all our meetups are, with the times and places. Also, grab a bunch of merch. It's all available online. Wayne Taylor is my name, and today we're tackling a phrase that's been around for centuries and is a lot easier said than done. That phrase being forgive and forget. The road to forgiving someone or even yourself is long, hard, and can take a lifetime. Forgetting what's been done is a whole other journey all by itself. Joining me again today, three of my very good mates, Jamie, Mikie, and Miguel. Fellas, welcome.
Hey boys.
How are we, lads?
Hey, gentlemen.
Good to have you back here again.
Great to be back.
Well, fellas, we all know that life throws us punches, and sometimes the people closest to us, even us ourselves, are the ones throwing them. Whether it's words that have been said or something done, holding a grudge can be the very thing more toxic than the offence itself. So what happens when we've been wronged? Do you forgive, let go and move on? Or is there still that lingering question of whether it's possible or even wise to just forgive and forget? Forgiveness is a gift. That's why they call it forgiving. It is for giving. Not only towards others, but can sometimes be the very best gift you can give yourself. The world is full of men who struggle to forgive themselves for things. So let's break down today's topic. Should forgiving someone automatically mean that you wipe the slate clean, or is it okay to keep your guard up just in case? Can you ever fully forget what's happened, or does it stick around, shaping how you see that person in the future and potentially other people as well? Does forgiving someone empower you to move forward? Are you struggling to forgive yourself for something? So, to you, our AverageJoes listeners out there, if you've ever have struggled with the idea of letting go but still feeling cautious, then this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Gents, I want to look at it two ways today. Forgive but forget towards yourself. Forgive but forget towards others. Is it ever a matter to forgive and forget, or is it forgive but never forget? Let's start off. Mikie, start with you, bud. Is it a matter of forgive and forget, or is it a forgive but don't forget?
Don't forget, mate.
Forgive but don't forget. Miguel, forgive and forget, or forgive but don't forget?
Depends how many beers I've had, mate. Sometimes I don't remember anything. No, I'm just joking. I'd have to totally align with Mikie. Forgive but never forget.
Okay. Jamie?
I concur. Exactly the same. Yeah.
I'm with you guys.
Do your own homework, guys.
Stop copying what? We're so original. Look,
Well-
I go. Tell me.
I think though eventually, the longer it goes, if the trust is rebuilt, well then maybe you could forget about it and put it in the past. But yeah, not at the start. You don't forget it. So
That in itself raises another question too. If you try to forget but you don't, and you bring it up again, do you think that's a sign that you've forgiven and moving on? If you ever bring it up.
well, it probably means that you're not over it. You know what I mean? And I think that especially if something's wrong done to you, you know what I mean? That the person who's done that wrong thing should be prepared to actually deal with it until it's done. It's a commitment on both sides, where if you're going to work through it, then, you have to work through it yourself and try to forgive and forget. But also they have to be prepared to revisit that process again until you have, I guess, what you need to be able to move on from that. So.
I mean, we hear it all the time. I mean, I not saying I hear it all the time in my relationship, but I definitely have heard this in the past with my own relationship. But when you have an argument, something happens within, for myself, something happens within marriage, and you want to settle an argument, you want to move forward, so you forgive each other. And then when you bring it up in the future, you then go, okay, well, actually, have you ever dealt with it? I've heard my wife say, many times before, why are you bringing that up? Does bringing it up mean you've actually moved on? So do you wonder if that's a sign? If you ever bring something up, does it then make you revisit forgiveness itself and go, okay, well, maybe I haven't actually let this go? Or should there be a cutoff of, hey, this never gets brought up ever again?
I think that's a bit insensitive, isn't it? Like, you go, oh, you're not allowed to bring that up ever again. Like, that would give me the shits too. Yeah.
I forgive you, but I have the right to bring
isn't it?
this
You
up.
or them.
Yeah. So I would
Well, are
be
you
like,
entitled to bring it up again?
I think you are.
Absolutely.
If you haven't gone past it, if you're not over it, then like that's especially in relationships or families or whatever. Like the team. It should be a team unit. You know what I mean? Like you guys are working together as a team, and if one of the team members is struggling, then you help them through that process. So,
Okay, so you just said, okay, but especially if you're not over it. So then if you're not over it, does that mean you haven't forgiven?
well, I think you can forgive an action, but as I said, you don't forget it, and so you're not over it. So you can forgive the action, but you still have to process it and be able to become, I guess, good about it, or I guess work through it yourself. You know,
Well, I'm thinking about this, like the amount of times that your wife or partner said it to you. Like, oh, back on the 19th of October in 1992, at 3:57, for the third time you said or did.
yeah.
If she's revisiting that, there's a fair chance that what we've just done has somehow been similar
Triggered.
too. So, is it that she's forgiven you the first time, but you've basically, in some way, shape, or form, revisited that same wrong? Have you?
I think what Miguel said, the trigger. It's a trigger point that reminds you, so that pain comes again. So therefore, you've got to process it again.
I think it comes down to circumstance, boys, really. Like, if you've got a bloke that comes home and regularly leaves his dirty clothes at the front door, and his wife's asked him every day, can you please not do that? Can you go around to the back of the wash house and leave your clothes in the washroom? He comes through the door. He hasn't even left his clothes there. 9 times out of 10, what's that wife going to say? Before he's even done it, don't leave your clothes there. Why? It's reactive. Because it's a learnt pattern and habitual belief that that's what's going to happen. So she gets in first. And he fires up and goes, haven't even got my clothes off yet. How do you know I'm going to leave them there? Well, because you've done it for the last 20 fucking years. Right? So it all comes down to, I think it comes down to circumstance. So what's triggering that thought? What's triggering the emotion? Is it assumption or is it presumption? Assumption's obviously assuming something that's going to happen that you've got no prior notice to it happening or information. Presumption is a perfect example of what I just said. I'm presuming it's going to happen because you always do it. So forgiving is one thing. Forgetting, no. Like my kids, you don't get second credit. We've tried that, but you killed it. Presumption, so forgiving, righto, cool. We've got past this point, but from now on, you're going to do your chores and then you're going to get your tech. Oh, come on, Dad, just once. Give it to us in credit. And I have absolutely done it. Righto, man. Here's all the cards, brother. You've got the whole pack. Merry Christmas, good luck. See you on the other side. 99% of the time it fails.
Yep.
Not because I'm setting it up to fail, but I can see a pattern. You'll get distracted. You'll get into your tech. You won't want to leave it.
Going back to what you said, Mikey, right, about, because I'm not tarring all the women with the same brush here, but
Although
does-
they are all the same.
although they're all just identical. But you do hear it in relationships where, like, we joke about it, but going, oh, on the 12th of March back in 1840, and they bring things up. And our instant response is like, oh my God, like, that was so, like, why bring it up? When I think of that, it's because we want them to have not only forgiven, but forgotten. Like, we expect it. God, can't you just forget that? Like, that's so long ago. Just move on, forget it. But then going back to the very original question that we just asked right at the start here, is it ever a matter of forgive and forget, or is it forgive but don't forget? We want the response when we've done something wrong, that it should be a matter of, oh no, I forgive, but I'm not going to forget. But we don't like it when our wives bring it up. So is there a a defining line here.
Do
to
they
go,
bring
what's-
it up with a bit of unforgiveness though?
That's probably
They
because
don't,
our
they
wives
don't
are wrong.
remind you that you've done something wrong. They do it quite forcefully, don't they? It's not like, oh, silly you. It's like, you pig, you whatever.
I guess that, okay, well then, does forgiveness come down to the intent behind what happened? If it was an accidental or if it was intentional,
For sure.
if you accidentally do something or you accidentally say something off the, off the whim, like, oh, you blah, 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 and you say something, compared to you intentionally go to your way to say something on purpose with meaning, here, you need to hear this, boom, boom, boom.
That's malice intent, though, right? There's a
absolutely.
That's a massive difference, mate.
So
Well,
is
it's going to
then-
be harder to forgive if it's premeditated or if they meant to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
and then
100%.
also a lot harder to forget too,
Correct.
because the intent is, you then question, if the intent was bad, a lot of questions get raised off that.
Well, then it comes off trust, though, doesn't it? You know what I mean? If the tent wasn't there, and trust is so easy to lose, but so hard
To build.
to rebuild. Do you know what I mean? So, and even in a business sense, like how many times have you had a really great relationship with people, and then you've gone out and been an idiot, or you've done something wrong, and that trust is just gone, and then you're starting from, ground zero again to try to rebuild that again. So, but you think about it though, is that the way that you rebuild that is by changing your actions, or also not putting yourself in those situations where they're going to be reminded about that sort of stuff as well. So even with that example of clothes being thrown on the table, well, you don't get changed out there. You go get changed next to the hamper. So then there's nothing that you can say. Do you know what I mean? So there's things that you can do, because if you've stuffed up, you have to own that. And that's the way I see it, where you're like, okay, someone made a mistake, that's fine, but is that changing the behavior? It's not what people say, it's the behavior or the actions that they do after that really tells me whether you should, well, forgive, but also how you can forget that or move past that. So,
Which again, I guess raises another question altogether. When you do forgive somebody, what are the actions you're looking for that is evidence to say, I can trust this person again? Is it because they've stopped doing the thing or they've done the thing that's obviously what you've forgiven for?
It's by their actions, mate. It's
Yeah,
very
that's what I'm
easy
saying.
to say.
What are the actions?
So accountability, and then saying, okay, I won't do that again, or I'm going to at least try to make it. When you can see them genuinely working towards a change consistently, they might sleep up, they might relapse. That's fine. But everyone can see the light of the tunnel. Everybody knows what their objective is. So if they're progressing forward, that's a huge change. But when you loosely say, sorry, I won't do it again, and it happens again and again and again and again, that's when things break down and people lose their shit. I'm fucking guilty, Your Honour. Drives me nuts.
I think effort's important. I think probably before that, what you want is empathy, so they understand how it's hurt you or how you've hurt them. Do you know what I mean? And then it's also ownership. So you've got to own. You're like, oh, yeah, I totally get that. That shouldn't have happened, or I shouldn't have done that, or I can understand how that gives you the shits.
Forgiveness and trust is two different things, right? Like we're talk with a lot of this stuff. We're kind of leaning towards trusting someone again.
Correct.
Forgiveness is internal. It's your heart. It's whether you forgive someone or not won't change them or their actions. It's purely internally for your own benefit. So whether they do it again or not is irrelevant. That's a trust thing. You've got to decide whether you're actually going to trust them to do better next time.
Well, I think it's the forget part is the trust thing.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So, or moving past it. So, because that's why I think you don't really forget, but you accept it. Acceptance is the first step to moving past.
Let me
What
ask
they
you this. Let's say you've got a colleague or a business partner or a family member, right? And you've all sat down and you've all agreed on a pathway forward. Okay, so I'm going to give you empathy because I wasn't the best leader and I was too aggressive, my approach was wrong, blah, 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 whatever else. Cool, no dramas. So putting all that behind us, And moving forward, not in a kumbaya, hippie, lovey-dovey way, like a real, okay, we've got grounding now, we've got foundations, we understand what the past was, and we both needed to vent on that, whatever scenario it's in. Let's move forward. And then starting from day one, the same thing reoccurs. And day 2 reoccurs. And day 3 reoccurs. And you say to them, like, I love you, or mate, I forgive you from the past, but you're not changing.
So it's done. You cut it off.
Mate, it's really, really tough. Yeah, not so easy if it's family members or
Yeah, you can't do that for family, but for business, 100%.
significant relationships within your life, whether it's friendships, business or personal. Like I can think of a few people right now, and I trust them implicitly with certain things, and other things, not a hope in hell. Purely because of presumption, past historical records that they're going to let me down. And there's been so many times where you get that euphoric state of mind. You go, you know what? I know they want to do better. I know they want to, like, you're smiling. You get where I'm going with it, mate. And you put yourself in that same predicament, and then you're carrying the monkey on your back to try and keep it all together moving forward when you know you should have shot yourself in the fucking head 10 years ago when you tried to make this stuff work. It's go, right, you're really, really good at this. You're actually really no good at that. And no matter how much accountability we give you or restarts that we have, it just doesn't go anywhere. So we're going to take that off you now. And I've done this probably in the last 12 months with certain things, business relationships, personal relationships, whatever. Like that conversation is no longer on the table. I'm not having it. Don't care about the forgiveness piece, the trust piece, how well you've come along now. You want to do it, you're going to do that for you or someone else, but I'm not doing it because it just puts you back.
Well, I think part of it is also having the conversation of your expectations of each other. Do you know what I mean? When you're like, this is what I expect, or if you want to use another term, boundaries. You know what I mean? Like these are my boundaries, and with the head shake.
The way you bobble
Mikey
your
doesn't
head
know
with
boundaries,
that.
do you, Mikey?
Did he?
But you know what I mean? Like your expectations of each other, and go, look, this is what I expect, and this is what I'm going to need for me to get past this. So, are you prepared to do that? And this is what I'm not going to accept moving forward, because I know you guys both said, "Oh no, you can't do that with family," but I think you can.
Yeah, absolutely you can.
Because if you've got a family member who's hurting other members of your family, do you know you have to make that choice where you're like. And I'm sure there's heaps of guys out there that have like a brother that is just a sponge, or a sister that's just, keeps doing the wrong thing, and or their own kids and stuff. Like one kid is just going totally off the rails, and is affecting the other kids as well too. Like, there's got to be boundaries in place where you go, you cannot do this, and if you do this, then we can't provide you the same support. I'm not saying you throw people out on their ass and you don't, but in my mind, there has to be consequences to your actions. And if there is no consequences to your actions, then there's nothing,
Again,
stopping that.
Sorry, Jamie.
No, go. Yep.
If I can add to that, again, it comes back to circumstance and empathy, right? So, okay, what is triggering this person to repeat these habitual traits? And is there something that we can do there to help them, or are they in victim mentality and the world's against them, blah, blah, blah? Because at some point you've got to just chop that umbilical cord, see you later, with whatever that is, right? But arguably, if they are starting to, work through that process and they are trying to get back on track or whatever it is, like it is a fine line because you've got to cut off that rotten limb. Otherwise it sends the whole body rotten, right? But doing it empathetically, there's a big difference between doing it empathetically and someone taking the piss. There was a podcast that we had right at the start of it, Wayne, where it was, at what point do you cut mates off? Can't remember the exact name of the podcast, but that was...
Circle of mates.
Yeah, the basic nuts and bolts of it. I think that's an aspect you've got to come at it from.
Mm-hmm. I think, Jamie, you brought up a very interesting point about expectations, because forgiveness is necessary when people have wronged us, right? But they've wronged us in accordance to what our expectation was. Like, I guess if then expectations are made clear, maybe there'd be less need for forgiveness in the first place. We get married, I'm going to bring up some big ones here, right? We get married with the expectation that we're going to be
Live happily ever after.
That she won't change.
No, but look, one of the biggest, because I've got, I have a story because this went both ways. But when you get married, you make the commitment that it's you and your wife forever. So there's an expectation that there will be a sense of commitment that it's you two alone and that's it. That's the commitment you step into. The reason I say that is because when you've got that expectation, you expect now from your wife that she's going to stay faithful to you, and there's an expectation that she has that you remained faithful to her. Now, those expectations exist because, one, they're brought up in our vows, but two, that's probably the biggest expectation within marriage that there is. I'm now faithful to you, you're faithful to me, this is rock solid forever. I've had it happen with two mates of mine going back about 10 years ago where I've had, because if I ask you guys, a simple question, what's the unforgivable, right? In my mind, I have things that I go, you move past. Because if you were to create a checklist of what's more hurtful or more painful or whatever, and I go, you can move past things. Like we go back to the start, Mikie, when you're saying, the clothes on the floor. If you come home and the clothes on the floor every week, it might have been Miguel that said it. You come home, the clothes are on the floor every single day, and she says it to you, and it turns into an argument. I said this to you yesterday, I said it to you the day before, but you keep doing it. Okay, let's move on. Please forget it. I'll try my hardest next time. They're easy things to forget and move on from, right? Now she doesn't forget, which is why she reminds you the next day. But the forgiveness parts there is easy because they're minor, right? But let's bring in some major ones. Let's look at, say, you are married and there's infidelity within the marriage, right? One partner cheats. Because like I said, I had this happen with two mates of mine about 10 years ago. Because in my mind, I go, what's the unforgivable? I would hate to be in that situation myself, but I would think that most men would go, I think the unforgivable thing is if my wife was to cheat, right? I had both, because I've heard men have this conversation before. Oh, mate, if my missus ever cheats, mate, that's it. It's done, it's over. Again, I had it happen with two mates and both responded totally opposite to each other. One did exactly that, where he went, nah, it's over, and he called it. Relationship done, totally ruined. He had two kids, moved on. I had another mate that would always say the same thing to, mate, if my missus ever cheat, mate, it was done. And it happened. His missus did cheat. And then I watched him go through an immense amount of pain, but I watched him forgive and I watched him rebuild to a marriage that still exists today. So I've seen the same break of expectation there. I saw men say the same thing that they would do. This is what I would do. If this was to happen, it's over. But I've seen one forgive and not so much forget, I guess, but one forgive and move on, and one not forget and not move on. The reason I say all that is because when you think about it, that's when you step into a marriage, that's an expectation that wouldn't happen, or you hope that it wouldn't happen, right? So then forgiveness in general, I guess, would ultimately come down to how clear you are on your expectations towards each other. Because if I say something to you and you're like, mate, that is so offensive, I don't know if I'll ever move on from that. It's because you had the expectation that I'd never say that to you, because I've come out with it, and whether I had an ill intent or I was a joke.
What are you trying to tell me?
I've got something to say.
He's voting the Greens.
I'm just building you up for something. I voted Greens. No, I'm joking.
That's it.
I can forgive, but I'll never forget. Forgiveness really exists because we have an expectation to begin with that has been let down on. So I wonder if we can remove the need for forgiveness by bringing more clarity to expectations to begin with. In anything, I'm not just talking within a marriage, I'm talking within mateship, within whatever, because the moment there's a breakdown of the expectation, then comes the need for forgiveness. So I wonder if it starts with expectation.
I think 100%. In my induction in business, that's what I used to say. Like, business relationships and personal relationships are the same. And, we've all been there where you go out and you date someone, and for 3 months, they're like the perfect person. They do everything for you. They're not, you know what I mean? They're not angry. sex is on tap. All these things.
No one
that-
gets a headache.
Yeah, no one gets a headache. Exactly. Oh, here, darling. Look what I cooked for you. Look what I cleaned for you. Look what I did for you.
Oh, the clothes aren't on the floor.
He's got one.
Where's the clothes on the floor?
He got one of those magic tables where everything just disappears.
Put it here.
Yeah. But then 3 months later, and like guys are guilty of that too. We're like whining, dining, opening the doors. Not saying anything negative, like holding our tongue.
Fart outside, all that stuff. Yeah.
So yeah.
I do have a story about that.
But that's the issue is after 3 months, you start to see the real person and these things start coming out where if you saw that right at the start, you would have never actually been with them in the first place or never chose them in the first place. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's such an important thing and it happens in business as well too. The employee is amazing for the first week, but then, they start showing up late, then they start, not working as hard, then they start questioning their pay. They start having negative conversations around the job sites and stuff like that. Like, if you just had those expectations, if you're like, cool, these are our expectations, and if you meet it, then we're going to have a successful long-term relationship. And if you don't, well, then we're not, So I think that is a massive part of it. But I tell you, your mate, though, the thing that I would really struggle with is if you did forgive and you moved on and it happened again.
Okay, so that's what I was getting at before. So when you look at the clothes on the floor, because it's minor, forgive happens again, and you go, come on, honey, that can last for a couple of months. It still cause an argument, still cause a rift, but it can last for months. But when they're major things, what is there a time limit on forgiveness? Or is there an amount of forgiveness?
So on that, right, one of the first business coaches I ever had, she said to me not to sweat the little stuff. Like I get the concept of it, but I totally disagree to some degree. If you can't get the little shit right, you're not going to get the big stuff right. Period. End of story. It comes back to mindset too, mate. Like your mate that you're saying that got past that, like champion him. That's a very, very powerful mindset. He loved that woman to bits, loved his family, and he wanted to get past it. Like the other guy, when I say mindset, mindset and what you let come into your mental space too, right? Like who's influencing you with those decisions? All the white noise from his mates, blah, 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 blah. Do you know what I mean?
Question on that. So your two mates, one stayed, the other one left, right? Now, that's the action, that's their decision at the time. If we fast forward 2 years, did the other one actually forgive his ex-wife for it? Like the action that you take doesn't necessarily determine whether you've forgiven or forgotten. It's your reaction at the time.
Yep.
Because I think your point is exactly on. It's like the forgiveness. You should forgive. Like you should forgive, anything and everyone. Like otherwise, as you said, it's going to be a poison that you're going to hold in on yourself.
Well, that's what his ex-wife wouldn't care.
Yeah.
10 years on, she'd be married to someone else having a good life, and he's sitting there going, "Oh, bitch."
So are you forgiving them, or are you forgiving the circumstance that occurred so you can relieve the pain from yourself and move on with your own life?
Good question.
Because those two instances there, right? I don't know the friends that you're talking about. And if you can share any information with us, address, social security card, I'm joking. If you can share any information
I just
with
texted
us,
to you. I should call on your phone.
if you can share any information with us, what the gentleman that couldn't get past it, where's he at now with his life? Is he extremely happy? Is he bitter? Does he trust women? Has he got trust issues within his relationships in general?
It's interesting is that he is engaged again, but with trust issues.
So he hasn't got past it.
No.
So
but is that a sign of unforgiveness, though? Or is that a sign of...
I would say that's a sign of unforgiveness. Because you would never forget that, right? You're never going to forget that your wife cheated on you when you broke up. Like, that's going to stick with you. I think at some point in our lives, we probably would all have had a girlfriend that cheated on us. You don't forget.
But is there also triggers that he's experiencing that happened with his ex-wife? So similar stuff that happened where he's like, oh, that doesn't, you know what I mean? So you always feel unsafe. Or are they totally open? And is she doing the things to help him move past that?
That's interesting again, because if you look at going back to the very phrase we're working with here, forgive and forget, or forgive but don't forget. When you forgive somebody, you're forgiving the person, right? If you don't forgive somebody, you're not forgiving the person, right? So if you're choosing to not forgive the person, does that then you're more cautious now, thinking that everybody else is going to do the same thing? Or if you do forgive the person, are you safeguarded against everybody else? Like, is it the situation or the person that's the forgiveness targeted at?
Well, that's how humans learn, isn't it?
Depends on the circumstance, though, right?
It's
Well, if
don't think so.
If I left my wallet out and it had $1,000 in it, and you walked past and you stole it,
Be gone.
No, I'd take it and I'd leave a sticky note saying, I owe you.
Mike.
would you leave a pack of lollies though?
Yeah, Mikey.
If I left my wallet with $1,000 in it and you've walked past
Yep.
and you took it, and I'd be like, "What going on?" And I found out it was you.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, not a problem, mate. I forgive you. Chances are I wouldn't leave a wallet out in front of you again.
Yeah.
But would I leave a wallet in front of anybody else? Or is the situation called for, now I need to safeguard it because is everybody the same? Compared to, I just don't leave it out in front of you. Like, should I be more cautious of the situation ever again?
Like
or cautious of you again?
There's areas where I'll work, like this week I've worked in at the Noosa Marina, and I know the management there, I know the shop owners there pretty well. You know, a couple of the old local yokels that come in for their cups of tea and they get their fish and chips or whatever. I leave my laptop, I leave my wallet, I leave my phone on top of the table that I'm working at, and I go off to the toilet, I go for a 5-minute, or sometimes I'm on the phone, and like blokes do, we pace. Before I know it, I'm down past the skate park. I'm like, I better get back to where my gear is. And I'll leave it unattended for 15 minutes. I have complete faith in the people in that environment. Are there other areas around Noosa Marina, Tewantin, Noosa itself, where it's more frequented by
Nambour.
backpack? No, I'm seriously, like
Literally
So-
happened to me last week.
Oh, you did too. Your car got stolen. You did too.
Hastings Street, Noosa. You guys familiar with the Surf Lifesaving Club?
Yep.
And the 3 benches in the top car park there, the little car park right next to the Surf Lifesaving Club. There's benches there that are always frequented by the old locals. I've done it there, not a problem.
I didn't know I'm an old local.
But not a problem. First thing in the morning, I set up
Doesn't
there
count
for the
if you're
day.
there at midnight.
I share a bench with them, have a cup of tea with them, whatever, cool, no dramas. Now, would I do it up the spit end of Noosa? No way in the world. Because they're all backpackers. Not saying backpackers are bad, but I've seen the custom of people that are associated there, and they just look like cagey characters. So I think it depends on the environment too, right? So like we're saying about circumstance, if you've got a girlfriend or a fiance or whatever, a wife, and she's out having a good time, and she gets drugged, or someone's taking advantage of a situation because she's under the influence, well, that's not her fault. Well, we're going to Warpath now. We kill her if the fuck's just done that. Not kill. We seek authority advice. But you get what I'm saying, right? So it's circumstance too, man. Like, if there is ill intent and they've gone out with a keen focus of another male, well, there's not much you can do there. Because it was premeditated,
Yeah.
right? But if there's circumstance that they've fallen into a trap, well, it's a totally different thing.
Whilst we're on the topic here of I guess, men and women here in one situation, do you think men forgive quicker than women do?
Hell yes.
You answered too quick.
Absolutely.
Mate, if
I don't
have
know,
an
mate. I
argument
can
at home-
hold a pretty good grudge, eh?
Yeah, but as far as being able to go, okay, cool, yep, that happened, let's move forward. And then just go, let's move forward, boom, go. Opposed to sitting there and stewing on that grudge for days and days.
I don't know.
Mindset then comes down to mindset again.
I'm a big believer to learn from the mistakes, or learn from, you know those super ads that says past performance is not an indicator of future performance. I don't agree with that. I think past performance is an indicator of what people will do in the future. I think yes, people can change, but I think that change takes time and takes effort and takes actions. You know?
Persistence and consistency, right?
So I think that I'm always going to be like, and I think that if you don't learn from and expect someone to do something from you, and but you just say, oh, that's just that one person. It's not just that one person. What it's telling you is that people are capable of that. And yes, there's different types of people, but you should be more aware of that. There are people out there that are capable of that. And I mean, like, that's what happens when we're kids, isn't it? Like we learn through education of other people or people hurting you that, okay, there is bad things out there, or there is stuff that happens that is bad, and you can't put yourself in that situation again. Like, it is part of growing up. Are you going, okay, I need to learn from bad things that have happened and then take ownership on how am I going to protect myself to make sure that doesn't happen again. I think that's just normal, you know?
I'm thinking about the forget thing now. And I was thinking about if you're having an argument with your wife and it's, heated, going for a few minutes, does it not serve you better? Like I'll walk away 5 minutes later, I'll be like joking again. I've forgotten about it. Not in the long term, but in the short term, if you have an argument, something happens to you, what does it serve you to actually dwell on that at the time? So is it not better actually to forget, out of sight, out of mind kind of forget, as opposed to chalk it up in the book as experience, but actually forget, put it out your mind, get on with your day?
Which I think men do very, very well and very, very quick. It becomes like a she'll be right attitude. Oh, she'll be right, and you just move on.
But is it because they just move on that it doesn't get solved? Because I agree with you 100%. Is that
thought?
If flooding's going on, like where it's the emotions that are taking over, there's no benefit that's going to come from that conversation at all. Do you know what I mean? And especially from my point of view, wanting to fix problems or be a problem solver sort of thing, you're like, all right, this is a problem, we need to fix it. I've learned over time that, if the emotions are high.
Yeah, that wasn't a problem, that was a feeling.
Yeah. If the emotions are high, especially with my partner, it's like nothing's getting solved from that because it's just a defensive conversation, isn't it? But there is times where you can go, hey, I want to talk to you about this. Is this a good time?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're priming them for the conversation piece.
Correct. Yeah. And I don't want you to see this as an attack. I just want to let you know this is what happened with me with that. And then that way you can have a reasonable conversation. But it happens all the time where people have a conversation and they just want to bring up a point that's annoying them. But then the other person gets defensive. And then you're attacking each other rather than going, okay, how can we work together to move past this? And it's the vice versa too, where you're like, if someone comes and attacks you, you're like, as you said, clothes are on the table. What do you mean? I haven't even done that yet. Like, do you know what I mean? Rather than just going, yes, sweetheart, I understand. I normally do that.
I think the answer there would be if your clothes were on the table next to me, I would pick all of them up afterwards.
and
Honey, there's one way to solve this. Take yours off too and put them there.
Yeah. And from now on, when my clothes are off, I want us to be in good moods.
That brings it back to expectation. Well, when I put my clothes on, I expect you to do the same.
So moving on, what you're saying there too, for the person that's responding, so like the guy that goes, I haven't even done it yet, for him to keep his composure, he'd have to have a really good understanding of what's transpiring, like almost have a mental pattern interrupt, right, and go, rather than firing back, what are you talking about, and get his guard up and then punch on verbally, go, well, if he can actually just for 2 seconds go, hang on a sec, why did that just trigger that person? Not necessarily a husband or wife, he and she, colleagues, wherever in the community, right? What triggered that? If you've got the power within you where you can teach yourself to do that, you can de-escalate and defuse really quick. Okay, I know where this is going. This is because last time I blah, blah, blah. Cool, thanks for that. And I'm not going to leave the clothes there. Good catch. How's your day been? Boom. Defused, de-escalated, moving forward. Her clothes are now on the floor with yours, like you said. Like,
I was going to say, one of my colleagues has got their clothes on the floor. I'm upset.
Is that because you don't have any colleagues? Or
Yeah, that's right. I'm like, right.
Anymore.
Well,
It's just me in the mirror.
yeah. And something I was thinking about, but I haven't actioned yet, but I was thinking about it, is maybe when one person is upset, the other person just sits and listens. You know, rather than trying to fix it right there and then, or
which will antagonise.
yeah, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, because I always find that because a lot of the time you just want to tell them how you feel. You're like, this has happened, and this is how it's made me feel, and I want you to know. And what I'd love is a change of behaviour or actions or something along those lines.
A bit off topic, but do you think as blokes we're allowed to have feelings?
It's a bit hard. We're human. I mean,
We're,
it's a bit hard.
we're
not
allowed,
to.
but I feel sometimes the expectation is that we're
Yeah.
we're
Oh,
not
that we
allowed.
can't. So, yeah, I get what you're
That's
saying.
what I
Mike.
mean. When you actually, if you were to sit down and say, hey, this is how it made me feel, how many times do you think that would be received as, oh, I acknowledge those feelings? It would be, oh, feelings.
Well, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
you're right.
It might be how you say it though, because if you say this really pissed me off, that is still a feeling.
Well, it's anger.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? So, or I loved how you did this. That's also a feeling. So, you know,
I constantly
which
get
is-
told it's my delivery is where I fail.
Lisa says the same.
My delivery
It's just
is
how you say it. I
boom,
don't
straight
know
to
how
the
else.
point
to
of
say
like,
That makes no
So-
sense.
so, like I've had it to the point where I've sat down at the table and gone, okay, guys, can we please have a discussion? And they've looked at me like I've just lost my shit. Like, what? Then I get laughed at. Okay, then it told me, right, that's fucking it. So I get it. It comes down to delivery.
I don't think so.
Do you think when we get energised and we want to have a deliberation or we're going to make a point, are we always coming from an emotional perspective or do we see it logically? I know personally, I'll be animated, I'll be elevated, but I can just go, I said don't do this because that's going to happen. Like logically, no, take all the emotion out of it. I said do not do this because this will happen. I can read the play. I've seen it happen a million times before. It's going to happen. And all the emotional shit gets built up in the middle. He said, she said, but I don't care. I do not care. I said, don't do this because that will happen. Don't care who started, did it, what, and now it's happened. So I think, personally, I think I come at from a logical perspective or I've got a bigger vision of what's going to transpire and how it's going to transpire. So take all the emotion out of it. Like, whereas other people...
That's what we do, isn't it? We take all the emotion out of it most of the time.
I think we do.
If you do suddenly address feelings, then it's...
Well, that's going back to what we were saying before about do men forgive faster or quicker than women? I wonder if that ties into it together. Because if you think for a man to have to forgive or show forgiveness or offer forgiveness or give forgiveness, he's admitting at some point that he's been hurt by something in order to have to be offer forgiveness for it. So for him to offer forgiveness means he's been hurt. So for him to be hurt, he has to admit that he's carrying a feeling of being upset or an emotion. So I wonder if men forgive quicker because it's a barrier of going, if I allow that to hurt me, I've exposed a feeling or I've exposed an emotion and we don't have that.
Weakness. You've exposed a weakness.
So I wonder if you can tie that into is forgiveness a masculine trait or is it a sign of weakness?
I'd say it's a masculine one.
I agree. And to answer your question, Wayno, is it a sign of weakness? In whose perspective? Like,
Society's maybe.
That's a deliberation out there for the viewers, for society, for whoever. If we can't do that, what are we going to teach our next generations? And we can't. You keep the lid on it all the time because the pressure cooker will boil over. It will fucking explode. Everybody's got their limits.
Yeah. And society doesn't want us to have feelings, have emotions. Society has put on men that we shouldn't have those, like, be affected by things that happen. You're a man, you should be able to carry it, you should be strong enough, thick skin, just, water off a duck's back kind of thing. So I think when you are in a situation where you need to forgive, and let's carry on for at the moment with our partners, where you need to forgive your partner for something, you're admitting that you have carried an emotion. So I wonder if that's why it is then. I think it's society. Society's put that on us. So should we just move on from things quicker?
I think we need to be heard. Absolutely. Because if you're not heard, it'll compound and you can't move on from it. It'll be reactive. Boom, it'll flare up. Boom, it'll flare up. Put out the bushfire. Boom, another spot fire's, being created. Like, if you can't express yourself, I'm not saying emotion like, I don't need everyone to give me cuddles and hold hands, for God's sake. Like, it's, hey, mate. So my emotions, ask anybody that knows me, my emotions, retaliation's in aggression. It's attack. Boom. Like, I don't cry. I don't run. I stand, deliver, and anyone will say that. But that is an emotion, right? And that's emotion build up over so much time, rather than just going, right, I can see triggers within myself now. I'm going to explode here at some point. Like, hey man, look, just to let you know, I have asked you 5 times to go and do X, Y, Z, or please not to do it. You're not doing it. It's now starting to trigger me. Like, I'm starting to become frustrated, and I'm not going to accept it, so it's not going to go away. So it's either you come and play at my level or play at my game, or, we got to get these rules working together, or we just don't do this.
Discover multi-award-winning real estate with podcast sponsor One Life Property Group, based on the Sunshine Coast, Queensland, specialising in everything from high-end duplexes to multi-residential developments, ensuring the highest quality workmanship. Visit onelifepropertygroup.com.au today to achieve excellence in your next property development.
My question is, what happens to the men that do continually forgive and don't let themselves have the feelings?
They get walked over, mate.
No. Yes, until one point.
Until they end up on the news, mate.
Till they can't take it anymore.
Yep.
And that's why when you see your mates out there who aren't really emotional sort of guys or whatever and just get beat up.
Well, they become desensitised.
But then when they hit the piss and go too far.
Oh, look out. Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Then they're angry at people. They do this. You know what I mean? Like, that bucket is just... it's too much pressure, and it has to come out somewhere. So I don't think that you forgive when you're ready to forgive. And I think one of the things is being logical people. Like, one of the things we want to understand is why. If someone's done you wrong, you want to understand why they did that. Or even more, if you've done the wrong thing, you yourself need to understand, why did I do that? Because if you don't, then you're not going to learn from the mistakes.
You know what? We've all, none of us are perfect. We've all done stuff in the past, stuff that has obviously needed to be forgiven for, whether it be small, large, whatever it is. Not to expose and to go into great detail, but have you ever done something where you are extremely grateful that you have been forgiven for it?
Here's that list you asked for me for this morning.
Thanks, mate. Yeah. Only 3 pages. Only 3.
She wrote those.
I gave you 3 books, mate. Is there something you can look back on and you go, oh, I'm so glad that person forgave me for that because it was hanging over me heavy?
I can't think of one right now. Like,
oh, you're all perfect. Okay, so
No,
I'm the only bad guy here.
I've been
I'm
accused of
thinking,
that
mate,
before.
So whether somebody's forgiven you about it, right? They've come and said, I forgive you, mate, blah, 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 let's move forward. That's one thing. 2, the biggest thing for me was ownership and just addressing the issue. Mate, I've dropped the ball here. This is the situation that we're in. This is what I'm going to do to drive out of it. Mate, sometimes that'll kill a relationship. Sometimes that'll strengthen it. But if you take that power away from that situation because you've owned it, that's the biggest form of self-forgiveness I've ever come across in my entire life. Hands
I
down.
do want to get into further on about us as men forgiving ourselves for things. But in regards to receiving forgiveness, I remember years ago, I was about was about 12 or 13. I was about 13. And I did something really, really, really bad to somebody.
We're going to need details.
I can't give you details. And then my life changed. You guys know part of my story, but my life changed dramatically when I was about 14, when I became a Christian, which was the biggest change I had in my life. From 14 onwards, I made huge changes from that point that saw me become, obviously, the person I am today. For the first couple of years after that, I was so aware of what I'd still done to that person that I had struggled with it. And then one day, randomly, I bumped into them at our church youth group about 3 or 4 years later. No, it might have been more. I was about 18, actually. I bumped into them when I was 18. And I was so glad I bumped into them because I had carried what I had done to them for so long and I had felt bad about it, right? But I'd felt bad because I didn't know whether they had ever gone on their own journey of whether having time by themselves and deciding that what I did obviously was wrong, but if they had forgiven me for it. And I bumped into them and I approached them and I said, hey, I just want to say something. You know what I did. And they're like, yep, totally know what you did. And I go, mate, I just want to say how extremely sorry I am. And for them to say to me, you know what, mate, move on from it, I forgive you. For them to say it to me was massive for me. Obviously, it could have been massive for them because I don't know when the forgiveness in them happened. But for me at that point, the fact that I could hear it from them that they had forgiven me for doing it was massive for me. Huge. I walked away feeling like, wow, like I had carried that unknowingly if I had ever been, because I just felt so bad for it. Like I felt so terrible. But the fact that I could receive it from somebody that I did it to was massive. Feeling was huge.
Can I ask you a question, Wayno?
Yeah.
So, well, all of us actually. So on that note, I'm assuming you stole someone's packet of lollies. That's what I'm assuming.
Snakes.
Is it?
Isn't it snakes?
It was killer pythons. Oh, it was gummy bears. It was.
Is it forgiveness that we seek for our own self-preservation? And when I say self-preservation, I don't mean that in a bad way, that we're egotistical thinking about ourselves. I genuinely mean that. Is it forgiveness that we seek for our own self-preservation mentally, spiritually, or is it the forgiveness we seek for reacceptance into that group of friends or into that circle of friends? What is it?
I think it is circumstantial. For me, it wasn't that. For me, it was I had just made a massive change in my own life I'd made a decision to live a life different than what I had lived. I know being 14 doesn't seem like a lot could have happened at 14, but a lot had happened. But
Like, look around the world. Kids at the age of 8 and what they're doing.
yeah, of course.
Congo,
Yeah.
like insane.
Yeah,
So
of
at the
course.
age of 14, there's things here that these panellists are all sitting around would have seen at the age sub-20s that some 6-year-olds will never see in their entire lifetime, mate. Depends on what you've been exposed to. You know what I mean? Sorry, go on.
No. It's interesting is that because looking at the scale of forgiveness and the power of it, I know I've told you this story, Miguel. Actually, this will be the third time you've heard this story because when we first met, you heard a small part of this story, but I know I've told you this story before. But talk about the power of forgiveness. I will tell you, lads, this story, and it's quite a shocking story, and I won't go into great detail, but for me, it was huge. But I did do a travel into the Congo in 2011, I think it was, 2012. And I had interviewed, now I don't know if you know much about Congo, DRC, but incredible place. And when I say incredible, not because it was gobsmackingly great and gorgeous, I mean incredible because it blew my mind on how different it is from a country like what we live in.
Western
Right?
civilization.
Yeah. And my role when I was over there was I went in and out of the prisons and did lots of talks in the jails. On the way out, I had to go visit a home of women that had been stolen by the militia in the jungles of Congo, used as sex slaves, but had somehow escaped. The home that I'd visited was a doctor's surgery that rebuilt these women's physical bodies because of the damage that had happened.
And genital mutilation.
Yeah, a lot of it, right? Now, this one lady that I had sat down and spoke with, so I went into this room and there was about 13 or 15 young kids up to the age of 2 because the the room that I went into was 0 to 2, and there was about 15 or so kids. Now, every one of these kids, this room was 0 to 2. They were the result of being born under sex slavery because obviously their mother had been used as a sex slave in the result. But every one of these kids had AIDS.
Yeah.
Right? So the result of rape, and these kids have AIDS, and they're under 2. And I held this one girl, and there's a photo of it, and I had tears in my eyes because I was holding this girl. And I ended up getting to meet her mum after it, and I was talking to the mum, and she had no ears and no breasts because they'd been cut off, right? Cut off just in a way to humiliate, cut off in a way to just because the militia were bad, right? And I was talking to this lady, and she was telling me her story, and I had never heard a story like this before. This was one of, I guess, 5 or 6 major stories that I'd heard over there, but this is just one that I'm bringing up to for now. And I'm hearing this story thinking, I can't even comprehend this. Like I'm a, 30, 35 or 30-something year old guy from Australia, and I've come in, I'm hearing this story from you. And she's talking in detail, and I am blown away, and I found it so hard to comprehend. And then she says, "But I forgive him, and I've had to learn to forgive him." And the reason I'm telling you a story is because the focus itself was on forgiveness, on her talking to me, smiling after telling me her story, but ending it with, "But I forgive him." And I think, like, just go back to the last hour and what we've talked about on how petty some of the things we've just talked about.
Doesn't even matter, does it?
And you go, that's just one story that I can tell you. And I go, I just hugged your daughter in the room next door who's 18 months old with AIDS. I'm standing here with you. You got no ears and no breasts because you've been mute, like hacked. Oh, but I forgive him and I forgive them. And I'm like, wow, you forgive them? How? How in the world does my mind even comprehend the power behind that? And it made me realise that it wasn't because they deserved it. They didn't deserve it. In fact, you could probably, I don't know how miraculously, I don't think you could be able to, but if you were to be able to find those guys, they wouldn't be sorry. But where did the power lie in all of that? The power laid within her going,
100%.
I forgive
Yep.
those guys. And she could stand there with joy and a smile on her face. And I go, I wonder if she could stand there with joy and smile on her face if she can't forgive them or chose not to forgive them. Because the forgiveness didn't say it was okay. Her forgive them didn't say, oh, look, it didn't really matter. Hell, of course it mattered.
She hadn't forgotten.
Definitely hadn't forgotten.
She had released herself from that burden.
Yeah.
That's what the forgiveness was.
And it makes you stop and go, we hold on to such pettiness, such little minor things.
I think
So on that way, with what we hold on to, right? So some of the stuff that I've done with Legacy 88 is just traveling overseas and all stuff with kids that are in very volatile situations. When I come back, I struggle with some of the low-level, extremely mediocrity bullshit that I deal with my kids. But I've got to checkmate myself and go,
Big in their world.
we're in Australia, and so there's no relevance to what I've just been over there combating to what these guys are doing. And then equally, when they come to me and say, Dad, I want to go on tech, I say, but you haven't done your chores, and they whinge and complain about it. It's like, mate, you want something to whinge and complain about? Let me give you a few hard-home truths about what we're combating overseas. I'll show you what's not fair. So in your realm, you know what I mean? So it's like you're saying, like the stuff that we worry about here, it's because of what we become accustomed to and it's what we know. But on the scheme of things of what's really going on in the world, mate, we've got nothing to whinge about.
Right, not to dwell on the clothes on the floor, but if he can get forgiven.
I think coming.
Samuel, edit.
What did you say?
Said not to dwell on the clothes on the floor, but if he gets forgiven, can't I?
Oh, fucking hell.
He's just trying to lighten the.
That's what we call dark humour, guys.
So one thing that, but it actually came even before you said that story was that there's two parts of the forgiveness, isn't it? It's having the forgiveness in yourself, but it's also letting that person know that they're forgiven
Yeah.
too. Because like, and I might be totally wrong, but maybe you were struggling with it because you had made that change, but you had that imposter syndrome where you're like, but this is who I was. I did this thing. And am I really this new person? And by hearing it from that person that actually said, I forgive you, actually gave you the opportunity to go, yes, that is me able to move forward. Like,
That's a good thought.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And-
absolutely.
And not saying that those guys were able, like, deserve that forgiveness from that lady, but if they were going to change, that could be one thing that could
That's
make
a
them
good
change.
thought, mate. That's a good thought.
Is by her saying, "I forgive you," and then that might make them go, "I don't deserve this forgiveness. I need to be a better person because if she can forgive me for that, then that's not." Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So-
That's a good thought, mate.
Well, you see those stories on the news and on TV where, you know, someone's child's been murdered or in a hit and run or killed or whatever, and the parents are in the courtroom and they go, I stand here and I forgive you. Can't forget what you've done, but I forgive you. Like that, wouldn't that undo you?
Oh, I've seen stories exactly what you're talking about, where you see like I saw one the other day on TikTok of a young kid that had murdered another young kid, and the father broke down in the courtroom and ran up, and they all tried to tackle him, but he hugged the kid, and you're like, oh, God.
Interesting, that one, isn't it? You're forgiven, but you don't deserve it.
So there is something. There's something about, because it's one thing. Like going back to my two mates, there's one thing to not be in the situation and judge what you're going to do. Oh, you know, I'll never forgive him for that, mate. If that happened to me, I could never do it. But then when you're in it, because if I asked you guys here, you guys have all got kids. If somebody was to harm one of your kids, could you forgive that person? What if you came home and you found out that?
No way in the world.
Okay,
And you'd never
but
leave your kid
but
around
we
them
say
again.
that without being in it. And then you see this guy in the courtroom who's lost his son because he was murdered on a street corner, go up and hug the very kid, and you go, I obviously we can't comprehend it because we haven't been in it, but that just shows the power of what forgiveness can do. That because obviously the father himself needed to do that for himself. Maybe he needed to do it for the young kid too, like you're saying, Jamie. Maybe that young kid receiving that hug now would go, wow, like this is not the response I thought I would get, nor the response I'd far deserve. But maybe this now triggers him to go, okay, maybe I can change. Maybe I'm not the write off kid that everyone talked. You know, maybe I'm not that kid anymore.
Or maybe bringing it back to the relationship. If you don't forgive them, maybe they're more likely to do it again.
Yeah,
You know,
yes, I guess.
because if they don't actually know that they're forgiven, then they're like, well, what am I? You know, it's like a guy who always gets accused of being a cheater. And the mindset goes to,
Eventually, yeah.
well, if I'm going to get accused for it and they
Might as
already
well
think
do it.
I am, well, so
That can also be a double-edged sword, though, because I know of circumstances where someone's been forgiven. They go, this is an easy resolve. I'll go and do it again because I'm going to be forgiven.
Which goes back to intent, what we were saying before. Is there accidental action compared to, you know, ill intent action?
Here's one for us. So after being forgiven for something that's been done, right? And whoever the person was that's forgiven you or forgiven the person that's done it, the person that's given the forgiveness, if they bring up whatever it was again, have they actually forgiven you or have they not forgotten?
I think.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think you can't judge a person on whether they're forgiven. Well, that's what, I guess going back to the start then. What's evidence of forgiveness? Is forgetting evidence of
close on the ground.
forgiveness, or is forgetting evidence of bottling up? Like you were saying, like you see this bloke that ends up imploding or exploding.
You're never
what is
really going to know, though, are you?
well?
No,
Only you.
only you
can
as
know
the
your own.
person know.
So, I guess it would be how they receive the other person. Like if you can tell, you walk into a room and there's two people that are not happy with each other, or one's not happy with the other. You can tell. So I suppose the evidence, I guess, of that forgiveness would be how they're receiving the other person. It would be a sense almost, wouldn't it?
Well, I guess that all brings up what Miguel was saying though, but I guess you can't judge them by that because deep down they might have got, you know what, I've forgiven them, but I've closed that chapter. I've done that recently over the last few years when I know you know my story.
Yep.
I've done that in the last couple of years where I've gone, you know what, I need to bring myself to a point to forgive this person. And cutting them off was hard to do, but extremely necessary to do. But has it sprung back up over the past and raised the question of, well, if it still does linger around and still does play on your mind, maybe you haven't.
You haven't.
And I ask myself that question all the time. So I challenge myself to go, well, what is evidence within me then to say I have? Because we've just discovered in so many different stories that there's extreme power for you to move forward by forgiving. So I ask myself, I go, well, if it's still lingering around now, I'm still having these, outright thoughts with just, have I moved on?
I believe you have forgiven, mate, and you've moved on, but there's certain things that are going to trigger. And that's a whole different circumstance, right? So just because it comes back to you and it's now at the forefront of your mind, it's because of something that's happened. Like there's people that I've mentored, there was one guy in particular, whenever he went past a specific tree, right, the look of it and the smell of it, the aesthetics and the smell, he would nut out aggressively. You know what it was? When he was a teenager, his father used to flog him with a branch from that tree. Wow. So the trigger was that powerful. But when we were able to break that down, he actually laughed at it. The hatred he had for that smell and that type of tree was insane.
Oh, that's why I think it's the understanding on.
Yep.
If you understand it, then you can deal with it, and if you don't, then there's nothing you can do about it. And I think there's levels to it too. So you might forgive the person, like I have no ill intent to you whatsoever, but that circumstance hurts still to this day. And that's where, as men, you've got to take ownership of that and work through it and work out what you need to get past that. But, so I think it's different levels where you're like, yes, I can forgive this part, but I'm not going to forgive the action that actually happened. I'm going to forgive the person. I'm not going to forgive the action, so.
Well, I think it's where the intent is aimed towards. Like if you wrong someone, a man in business, it's one thing. If you wrong a man to himself, it's another. If you wrong his family or the ones he loves, it's a whole other kettle of fish.
100%. That's really personal.
Yeah. Well, that's it, isn't it? It's like your heart has different layers in it, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Like you got your money and then you've got, your family and then you got yourself. And the closer it gets, because really one of the worst things someone can do is do something that you can't forgive yourself for, isn't it? If you've done something where you're just like, that's the thing that eats you up the most, isn't it? Where you feel like a horrible person for doing that,
Well, going back to the stuff in the Congo, right? Now, that guy who did that stuff, what if he's had a radical change of heart and he's sitting somewhere in the world going, man, I wonder if she forgives me. Like, I wonder, I'd say we've all had stuff in our life where we go, I wish I had the opportunity to know if I was actually forgiven or not. And you're never going to know, not in this life.
I think to some degree you can, Mikey. You can understand it, and it's within people's actions, right?
If you're never going to see that person again.
Oh, right, okay. In that instance, I get it. Yeah. You've got no closure.
Which
or can you have closure though? Can you get it? Which where I want to lead it down now, I guess it comes down to exactly what you're saying, Mike. Like, what if this bloke has gone through his own change in life? Chances are he'll never find her again to even confess or ask or receive any kind of forgiveness. Can he move on by simply going? Because this can open up a whole different new thing now to talk about with men forgiving themselves. Is he able to move on by going, you know what, what I did was wrong, it's so damn hard to let go, but I'm going to forgive myself for it.
Well, forgiveness is earned, isn't it? So I suppose here's the
Is it
question.
earned? Is forgiveness earned?
Okay, let me ask you this. If you were that guy in Congo, what would you feel you'd have to do to get forgiven? You'd feel like you had a monster journey ahead of you. Like if that
You'd
was,
feel like you need to find her.
you'd feel like not only would you have to find her, you'd have to
to
protect
combat.
others.
Correct, 100%.
You'd have to find a way to protect. Like you're then on a journey where you're trying to earn forgiveness, where you whether it's you go and helping rescue other women or you're going and stopping the other guys, but you're
So like a penance of some sort.
I think it comes back to the change of behavior. And I think in that, if you have to forgive yourself for something, it's probably going to be a lot harder than it is for someone else to forgive you. Do you know what I mean? So you're going to have to like want to change or do so much stuff to try to make up for the stuff that you did. Yet when you're forgiving someone else, when you're it doesn't seem like such a hard process, does it? Do you know what I mean? But when you've forgiven yourself for something, you do want to, as you said, penance, or you want to actually do something to make up for it.
I totally agree with Mikey, mate. Like, you don't just wake up. Oh, well, I don't say you don't. There would definitely be human beings in the world that just wake up tomorrow morning and go, okay, I should have done it. I did it. It's all good. I'm moving on.
it was
Like,
only a
that's-
Tesla.
That's someone.
I bought a Tesla. I'll never forgive myself.
that's someone that's got no conscience, really,
Yeah,
right?
but okay.
But totally agree with you, mate. Like with Legacy 88, there's conversations I've had with you, Wayne, over and over and over again. I've had it with my wife, I've had it with my kids, and I've had it with some very close friends. I've gone, because of the person I used to be, is that the reason I've started Legacy 88? To help more people? Potentially, to some degree, yeah, for sure. I even had the issue, mate, of, what was the word you used? When you think you're acting.
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. Like, I'm going, am I? So I've actually had to sit with it and go, am I doing this for me? Is it my self-preservation? Do I actually really want to help the world? Blah, blah, blah. You know, I've gone through all those things legitimately to find out why it is. And I've found the reasons. Yeah,
So
the
before
reasons
we
are-
go any further with this, right, is it safe to say that there's all things in all of our lives where we would say we haven't been forgiven, or we don't know if we'll ever be forgiven? Have you done stuff in your? I'll sit here and
absolutely.
go, I've done stuff where I will not know in this life whether I've been forgiven or not.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
But
I think I would really love to know whether they forgive me
Yep.
or not. Because I think in my mind, it's probably worse than what
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
for sure, man.
it was for them.
That's the hope, isn't it?
But then my mind would then go, is it a genuine form of forgiveness, or are they just saying it?
Mm.
So I actually want to learn, have I earned your respect and your forgiveness? And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is by spending more time around you, with you, blah, blah, blah. But
You'll never see them again. You're never going to see these people again, so you're never going to get the chance.
I'll tell you one thing that's coming up with me, because I was like, when I heard your story, I was like, man, I'm going to go out and everyone who I've actually forgiven of the people that have wronged me, I'm going to tell them, it's all right. Hey, I just want to let you know this thing, I forgive you.
But you're still a prick.
I was going to say, like, you are a dickhead, but I forgive you.
No, but then another thing came up and went, what if they think they didn't do anything wrong?
Yeah. Boom. Ignite.
Because then I
volcano.
wouldn't forgive them. I'd be like, well, listen here.
Jokes.
Yeah. No, I'd be
Testing
like,
you.
listen, okay, you don't think, yeah, all right, let's go. You're going to,
I wonder
isn't
what
that
that message
weird
was about.
for that to come up?
yeah. No, but I think that's actually a good challenge to put out to ourselves and obviously to the guys listening too. It can be as simple as a text message.
Yeah.
Hey mate, not sure if you're aware of this, but you did or said this a year ago. It has been playing on me. Just want to let you know that I forgive you.
Yeah.
Would it be taken the wrong way? You're saying, forgive me, I don't even know what I did mate.
Well, what's
That's-
the
Am I
value?
that bad of a person?
But that's what I was worried about. And you're like, are you starting an issue where it wasn't an issue before? You know, where you're like, you've forgiven them. They didn't think it was an issue.
And now you've started one.
Yeah.
I think it comes down.
They're all sitting down. Look at this bitch.
Doesn't it come down to the value of the relationship and what it means to you too, though? Like if it's just some random guy that you see at a sports club, you know, and you might know him as Joe because you met him in the bar, like whatever. Like, what battles are we going to fight, and what ones are we going to fucking let go because we cannot be bothered with the rigmarole behind it, mate? That's what it comes down to from my perspective. But if it's a close mate, it'd be like, hey man, bang, bang, bang. This is what I've thought, and there's been stuff I've spoken to you about openly. Like, this is what I thought. Boom, 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 boom. And you'd be like, yeah, mate, you're being a dickhead. Thanks, Wayne. You're so supportive. I've never come back to AJ's again. But there's been stuff that we've spoken
I
about.
said you need to come more often because you're a dickhead.
You know, whatever it is. And I think within ourselves, we can feel if people are giving us honest answers or they're pussyfooting around and they're not giving us the honest answers. You can tell by body language, you can tell by vocal cords, you can tell by behavioural aspects when you see them next time, blah, 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 blah.
Mm. Well, I think that's a very good point that you brought up, though. It's that it depends on the relationship. Whether you're going to, because I guess if it doesn't mean much to you anymore, you know what I mean, then is it worth that effort?
Well, I can think of an incident right now, and there might even be there might even be listeners that'll listen to this, and if they are, they'll know what I'm talking about. So one of my children's school, we had an issue there with one of my boys, so they'll definitely know who it is now. But anyway, when we first went to this school, we were told that we would always be on this list for a specific outside of school activity. We've made sure that when this list was coming out, we would action that list literally within 2 minutes of it being sent out. And for the last 3 years, there was the last 3 years, we haven't been able to get on this list. So this year, I went and spoke to some friends who've also got a child at that school. And I said, can you do us a favour and not respond within 24 hours? We'll respond. I just want to gauge something here. Just if it's me going crazy and think it's conspiracy theory, or if what I'm saying is correct. And I was correct. There was a vendetta against one of our other children. Now, this is coming from a senior level, right, within the school, mate. Pathetic. Absolutely fucking mediocrity at its best, pathetic. So I then showed our youngest child, well, you've done nothing wrong. This vendetta's been caused between your older brother and these adults who are supposed to be leading by example. I said, so if you want to go and do that activity, I personally know the person that owns that business. I'll ring them and we'll still go and do that activity. It's got nothing to do with the school. It's outside of the school and it's at their discretion whether or not we rock up. Now, respectfully, I then rang the school and I've said, you guys couldn't fit us in on that list. So I'm just letting you know that I've rang blah, 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 and we've been welcome to go down and do it. Is there going to be an issue with you, myself, or the business owner? And if there is, we're still going to hire that equipment, but we'll just be sitting alongside so my son can still be with his mates. Put it to bed. Done. Still didn't get in the list, but still rocked up. Still showed face.
Now, the question is, though, is that if one of your friends' kids missed out because they didn't respond,
no,
would they forgive you?
You said wait 24 hours on a miss.
So the same deal was if they don't get in, and there was other families that didn't get in, there's a purple circle there. No worries, man. We'll go and do our own thing. Cool, happy days. And we still took our kids down. Like, they don't own this area. They don't own. I'm trying to be as candid as I can here.
You're starting to sound like a female. You don't own me. I don't see no ring on this finger.
all I was trying to show to my youngest son was if you want to be respectful but be staunch in your beliefs. So respect that. Okay, cool, man. There's a boundary there. No problem. You didn't cause it. It is not fair. But you don't have to lay it down and be a victim. You can still find another solution, and you can tell them, I'm coming, and I'm going to be part of this. I won't be part of your exact group, but I'll be a metre to the side. And I'm still going to play with my buddies. Happy days. Everybody wins.
Well, you're teaching them not to be a sheep and just go along with whatever happens, isn't
Teaching them not to accept what society delivers. You will, you become institutionalised when you start going to school at the age of freaking 5. So you're prepared to go into the workforce, shut up, don't use your imagination, and do as you're told. Yeah. That might be another episode, Uncle Wayne.
I wasn't sure where I was going, but
Sorry.
Well, you're right. So, question: how serious does something need to be before it requires forgiveness?
That's on the individual. It depends what it means to them.
I think it works both ways, because if you're going back to what Jamie was saying before, if you send a text to someone and go, hey, mate, you did this, to them it might not be big, but to you it is. But then you as the one that's the doer, you might go, wow, this was really big. I need forgiveness for this. When they, again, I think it's circumstantial.
Because we've spoken about something that's like you've destroyed someone's life, right down to you've left your clothes on the floor. Like, that's a whopping big scale. Hey, where does it?
But again, it comes down to the circumstance, mate. Like, we're talking about this, living in a Western civilised culture. We're not going to, in our lifetime, we won't see a group of children that have been radicalised at the age of 8 running past our house with an AK-47. So
Public schools with kids wearing dog collars, mate.
Maybe we should have kids running past our houses with AK-47s. It might clean something up. No, but what I'm saying is, I think it comes down to what we're accustomed to, right? Like, and you did right, dude. One extreme to the other, like clothes on the floor, someone being brutally mutilated. Sorry. So it comes down to what we're used to, and whilst that's an extreme example, those clothes on the floor could eventually lead to a compounding and a breakup, because it's put that much mental pressure on someone, and all those small things grouping together, boom, the volcano's erupted.
But with the little stuff, should you hold on to it enough that it's actually going to make you explode? Like, I get it, a massive thing, but if there's 10 years of clothes on the floor, do you not owe it to yourself to not let that?
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Well, it's a simple answer. You should let it go, right? But how do you let it go? You know, so
it's in that moment.
So
right?
what do you do then?
Well, but it's not only in that moment though, because if it keeps building up, so it's either you have to move from it. So you either have to talk to mates about it and make sense of it. You know what I mean? You either have to change the behavior. You actually need to maybe have that conversation with the person and get them to change the behavior. Maybe you need to ask for forgiveness, or maybe you need to ask or actually forgive yourself. You know what I mean? So it's...
So do you need to rationalise what the other person has done and actually put it into perspective? So we're going back a few years now, but I went into business partnership with someone, and from the very outset, they did the wrong thing and, tried to funnel money and do all kinds of stuff. At the time, I wanted to kill them. A year later, I still put me in a room with them. I'd be angry. I slowly thought about what they'd done, why they did it, looked at their situation, and was like, and I actually saw them again a year or so later after that. And my reaction was pity. Like, I was like, do you know what? You actually haven't changed. You're still about the same thing. But it was my reaction that completely changed, because I saw what was going on with them that was making them do the stupid things. And it was actually something completely different. And for me, that was like, oh, actually, do you know what? It was this moment where I was like, oh, actually, okay, I must have forgiven this guy, because now there's pity where it used to be rage.
Yeah.
So what you say is actually looking at and rationalising what it is. So again, going back to the trivial thing with the clothes on the floor, if your partner's the one leaving the clothes on the floor and you're the one getting angry about it every day, do you look at why they're doing it and you go, well, okay, maybe they've had a big day and they're destroyed and they've come in and they've just need to drop these on the floor and go and have a shower.
But that's that's why I think reaching out is so important, because you can see that different perspective from there. Do you know what I mean? Like, even with your mates sort of stuff, where where with the cheating and stuff, that conversation is going to be determined on what your mates say. Because some of your mates are going to say, mate, cut it off,
yep.
Screw it. Like, and I know I would probably be in that aspect, yeah. But I know, Wayne, how much Wayne respects the sanctity of marriage and whatnot. He'd be like, is there a way that you can move past this? or do you have to destroy the family? Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that either of us are right or wrong, you know. So, although we probably both think that we're right, but it is important to go speak to those other people to try to get that different perspective from it. Do you know what I mean? Because it would be easy. Maybe a wife has already gone through that process before, and the husband does work 70 hours a week, and he does come home, like, you know, he crawls out of bed and goes to work. He comes home and has a shit shower, shave, eats his dinner, and goes to bed. And the clothes fall where they may. You know what I mean? Maybe they know someone like that that's gone, I felt that same way, but this is what I had to think for me to be able to get over that.
Did you just do feel, felt, found?
Potentially.
But you brought up a good question there, Jamie, because I think if you're approaching a situation that's happened that requires forgiveness and you're looking for the intent behind it, would that determine whether you forgive that person or not?
I think it has a massive factor. If someone's deliberately hurt you, but it is also dependent on, they might have done something that has hurt you and they did it deliberately but didn't think that it would hurt you as much. Yeah. Or they actually did it to hurt you, knowing that it would hurt you. Because there's levels to it, isn't it? You know?
Well, going back to the story in the Congo, this lady, she was intentionally hurt on purpose, but had the power to forgive.
Yeah, I would find that super hard. But I think that is like a beautiful story of forgiveness, isn't it?
Who did it set free? It didn't set him free. It set
That's what I'm
Set
looking at.
her
Like
free,
the
yeah,
fact that she could stand there and smile, not because of finding joy in the circumstance, but finding joy in her new circumstance, which is because she had forgiven, she could stand there with joy and be able to tell her story. So tying forgiveness into the person giving it, I don't know if it comes down to if you need to know why. I think needing to know why brings an understanding, but I don't think it should. Like, let's just play a situation out. If bad example, you find out I punch Kobe in the face, and you track me down. You go, mate, you're a 45-year-old man. You've just punched my kid in the face. We're on. But then I said, mate, I need to tell you something. I found him doing X, Y, Z, and then you went, oh, okay, all right, I get it now. So
I'll go punch Kobe in the face.
I'm going to punch you in the face.
yeah. Give me the bat. Give me the bat.
but your approach to me now, like if you only found out that I had punched him, and you come up to me and go, mate, before you do forgive me, you'd be like, mate, let me get 10 hits to your face first before we. You wouldn't.
Well, the Bible says eye for an eye, doesn't it?
Punch for a punch. I think finding out, getting an understanding as to why, I think there's merit in that and it's validated, but I still think.
But didn't, when you told that story, she said to you, I can see how they did that, why they did that.
Well, you do to a degree. You do know, you don't know why, but you know why. That these men started out as young boys that were either kidnapped themselves and then institutionalized, what Miguel was saying, into being a certain way.
Yep.
But then you've got these, not to stay on the story of this situation in the Congo, but perfect example. Whilst we were there, we'd met up with the head of the army, like the government army, and he had said that only 2 weeks prior to us getting there, they had 3,000 of their men armed leave the army and join the militia. And the reason being was because what the government are paying wasn't enough to support their family. They were finding that for them to leave government-funded army position, join the militia, you then just come into any town you want, rape, steal, kill, pillage, and you get a lot more. So you go, nothing justifies what they do, but when you understand why, you go, okay, that brings understanding. It doesn't bring
Justice
to it, and it doesn't bring okay, I get it now, all good. It doesn't bring that to it. But when you do hear their stories, you do go, I feel for that person now. I feel for the guy. Do I think what he did was right? Hell no.
Hell no, yeah. It's the same overseas, like it's the same in Cambodia, Thailand, all through that Golden Triangle, mate. It's exactly the same. It's habitual. It's generational.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
so sad.
As you're saying, with the kids that get radicalized with the AK-47s and stuff, they genuinely believe that, people are invading them and that they want to get rid of them. Do you know what I mean? So, but then other people are just trying to protect them, protect themselves, So whatever side you're on, I think they always justify it to themselves. And that's why I think understanding is the first step to forgiveness. And I don't think it's, right and wrong, but the thing is, from your perspective as well too. Do you know what I mean? So, and definitely not in those circumstances, but sometimes the lines are grey, and coming from your perspective, as you were saying, if you caught someone doing something wrong and you killed them, does that make you a bad person?
Depends on the circumstance.
Do you know what I mean? Like if you came along and a girl was getting taken advantage of or something like that, and you come along and kick the guy in the head to get him off her,
Yep.
and he dies.
Yep.
Does that mean you're a horrible person?
Absolutely not.
But so that's your right and wrong, right? But would his mother or would someone from the other side or one of his mates who maybe thinks that kind of behavior is all right, think that you're a bad person?
Maybe. Look, take the instance what Wayne was explaining before about the father that went into the courthouse and hugged the perpetrator.
Yeah.
Mindset, right?
Yeah.
On that same note, there's those two young guys, and I've seen the footage of it through what we do, that were in the subway, like in the Queensland area recently, like in the last 12 months. One was like 18, the other was like 21. Literally walked past each other. I'm pretty sure it was a Friday afternoon, subway, didn't even know each other. Bit of ego, bit of testosterone, few words thrown. One group starts advancing, other groups yelling back profanities. They keep moving back though. Two guys lunge. One guy pulls out a cardboard knife, hits a jugular. 3 or 4 seconds later, old mate's on the ground. So you've now got two families. But the authorities found the kid sitting still on the train, mate, just in shock. The guy that had set the other guy's throat. So people go, lock him up, throw away the key. What I see there is the ability to go and re-educate these freaking schools where the system's failing these young men and go, if we can get a mental pattern interrupt into you now, man, like one, why did you have the blade on you? And the legitimate reason, he works in an industry where it's like for an electrician, having a screwdriver on your tool belt, right? So he just forgot to take it out of his pocket. That's genuine, legit, no dramas. But if we can get that mental pattern interrupt, like so you've made one split second decision now. If you guys want to do a bit of ego, there's a safe way to do this. You can go to a gym, you can work out, you can jump into an MMA ring where you've got guys around to mentor, you can jump in a boxing ring in a healthy environment, right? But that didn't occur. So you've got two families that are completely wrecked. One where the kid's deceased and one where the kid's probably going to do 15, 20 years. 18, he's a baby. How's he going to come out? 10 times as hard and as worse than he went in type of thing. So,
well, it's on him though, isn't it? He might sit on it, make some changes, and change it, or he might let the circumstance influence him.
Do you think in that situation, if he forgave himself, it would be would he get hardened and would he end up in that? Or if he didn't,
I'll tell you, if he forgave himself, he'd have a better chance.
Yep. Is forgiveness not now? Is that not self-preservation? Is that not the only way forwards? Like in terms of quality of life and quality of outcome?
Self-preservation for the right reasons, for sure.
Yeah.
Not self-preservation to fluff your own tail feathers.
No, it's a good thing.
I think that young man is going to be a perfect opportunity for AJs to potentially work with him to get him out and to do talks on day releases and stuff in front of schools. That's my opinion.
But forgiveness would be the first step, wouldn't it? Because if you didn't, without having that sort of aspect of going, I did something wrong and I need to forgive myself for this, you know what I mean, or move past this, then because who's to say that he won't go later on? Oh, that's just who I am now. Do you know what I mean? And let it.
Well, he's going to be labelled a murderer. That's the thing. He's going to be labelled a murderer.
And look at the environment that he's in.
Would he be the kind of
mate.
kid sitting there in that jail cell going, I'll never forgive myself for what I did? Or do you think he sees it as it was a split decision to turn? Because I know the story we've been talking about. He turned really quickly in a way to try and like flick a knife around to go, hey, here's a quick swoosh to get everyone to back away. But just miraculously nipped this guy's throat just in a way enough to kill the kid.
What's the sliding doors moment, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like that is a pivotal moment that is going to make you choose what direction you're going to move into. So, and this is why forgiveness is so important, though. You know what I mean? Like whether you get forgiven or you forgive yourself, it's going to. Well, I guess the first thing you got to do if you're going to forgive yourself is actually realize you've done something wrong.
That is, it goes back to that ownership.
Yeah.
You own it.
In that instance with that young man on the train, like he knew he'd done something wrong. Like he was still sitting there in shock, disbelief. What have I just done? So his whole life just flashing before him, right? That one split-second decision. Like 5 minutes, mate, 2 minutes prior or post that time event, they wouldn't have even passed each other in the subway.
Mm.
So to have that control in the moment, that's what I was saying to you before when I said it's in the moment, and he said, no, it's not. What I meant by that, if I would have elaborated on it for you, was like it's in that moment to be in the mindset or to recognise it in that moment. Like, boom, you can now be in control of the destiny of how that situation's, what the outcome's going to be of that situation. Crickets.
Well, lads, I'm happy to wrap it up there. Is there anything else, guys, you want to add?
I thought you were going to ask us to do confession.
Well, that's how I was going to close. Yeah.
You first.
I think I just said a few already. I got so much out of that, fellas. I truly did. It's
good.
I got so much out of that. I think I think the thing I'm walking away with, there's so much I'm walking away with actually. But just, you know what? Let's go back to the very first question in regards to, is it a matter of forgive and forget, or is it a matter of forgive but don't forget?
Forgive and don't forget.
Well, I've been trying to hold this back, but like the rapper J. Cole said,
Here it comes. Can you rap it?
You know?
I don't know it.
I don't know.
Go, Jamie.
Actually.
Bust the groove.
What kind of beat
I'm
do you
going to
need?
have a Bush moment here maybe for a second.
A Bush moment?
You know, when he's like, forgive me once. Shame on you. Forgive me twice. Shame on me. Forgive me 3 times. If you wrong me 3 times, fuck the peace signs. Pull the chopper and let it rain on you. So,
wasn't how I thought this podcast would end. But
So what Jamie's saying is forgive but don't forget.
correct. Well, if you wrong someone, then that's your problem. But if you let
mate, no
other
more
people
J.
keep
Cole.
doing to you,
Look,
Can we just put a J. Cole ban on this podcast?
On that note, though, right? There's with the whole things in life. There's supposed to be regulation and law. What's lawful, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. So even if you go through a process in life, this will come down to the individual, right, on what makes up their decorum and their own personal accountability. They might be seen in the court of law to be innocent, but we all know that there's some people that are fucking guilty, like arguably guilty, but they've got the best lawyers or the circumstances were in their favour. The sun was shining that day and they got away with it. Now, is that person going to go on and carry their life out the same way, thinking they can get away with it all the time? Or are they going to grow enough balls to go, actually, I fucked up there. And even though it's been dealt with in the court of law, I'm going to go and make this right with a person. Whether it's a poor business dealing, whether it was there's so many aspects you can look at, I suppose. I think I don't agree with the justice system. That's not being forgiven. That's just not being found guilty for whatever reasons. So I think within that person, they then need to go, do I want to make this right? And do I want to be honourable in the situation? Even though I've been proven not to, have done something wrong, am I going to man up?
Yeah. So I reckon forgive, learn your lesson from it, and then forget about it.
Question. All right. We just released the podcast of Rearview Mirror, correct? Yep. And it was Ron on that that business dealing really hurt him. Like there was a guy who was his brother, and that was something that I got out of that was just how much.
He planned to kill him.
Yeah, how much it hurt.
legitimate
Oh, yeah.
plan. No, but if you hear his story, he had a legitimate plan
I know,
to
but
kill
we
him.
don't.
It's true.
But even to this day, it still hurts him. You know, I wonder if, that was resolved or if it, you know what I mean? Like if that guy tried to make amends or actually made the effort or he was able to heal it, like how much of a difference that would make right now,
Well, they did say that he is dead now, but I wondered leading up to his death if he had made any kind of retribution towards it.
Find out on next week's podcast.
Yeah, fine. We'll talk to Ron in the meantime.
So a question for you then. Like you said, forgive, forget.
Yeah, forgive.
Yep.
Learn your lesson.
Yep.
So the lesson you don't forget, but forget about the situation.
Right, okay, cool. Yeah, I get it. Because I was going to say to you, so in that circumstance with like your previous business partner, right?
Yep.
Would you go into that? And let's just say hypothetically, so you've gone into a new partnership, alarm bells start ringing, red flags.
Yep.
Because it's a repeat of what's happened in your previous relationship with your business partner.
Yep.
Do you go, it's all good, I forgot, I've forgiven,
No.
I forgot, this is a different guy.
I've learnt my lessons from that.
Yep.
But I've forgotten and put down all the hurts of it. And that's what I mean by forgetting. Forget the hurts of the situation, move on with your life and be happy.
Yep.
But remember and learn, there's lessons that you learn from everything, right?
Everything
we do.
That's a great clarification.
This is for the viewers,
Yep.
James. This is for the viewers, Mikey. So it's
Sorry, I didn't say that right before. Okay. Yeah, no, that's what you do. Hey, like you have to learn from everything in life that happens. So a hurt, a wrong is no different. But there's no point in carrying that hurt and, not forgetting about it. Like, put it down, man. Life's too short. You're not here for long. You don't want to be. There's so many different episodes we've talked about. The guy that's sitting in the house who's lost everything.
Yep.
That's a hurt that he's dwelling on it. What does it serve him to hold that? Like, again, you're not here for long. Enjoy the good stuff. Put that down. Learn lessons from everything you do, from all the hurts, from everything. But man, whatever you do, don't let it sour you to the point where,
You're locked up in a house.
So what you're saying is,
no
mate,
matter what in life, there is still always boobies.
you said movies, right? Movies.
Movies.
So what you're saying, to sum it up, learn your lessons.
Yep.
Apply them to the next part of your life so it doesn't repeat history, but also going into the next phase of life with a new person, whether it's personal, commercial, whatever, you can't judge them for what's happened previously.
100%.
Because it wasn't them that did it. Yeah.
Or forget the hurt that you're carrying on to.
Yeah, correct.
As well. Yeah.
Correct.
Let's wrap it up, fellas. Once again, that was incredible. Really, really loved it. Guys, thanks for joining us here at the Men's Collective podcast with us, the Average Joes. Like we say every week, jump online, find out where all our meetups are. Make sure you get along to your Average Joes meetup this week. All the times, the locations there on our website and on all our social media. Make sure you subscribe to all of our channels, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Get on all of them. Leave us a 5-star review. It means an absolute, motto to us here because it just bumps our rankings up. Jump online, grab some merch. It really pushes us further and allows us to do more and more. Gentlemen, thanks once again. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Wayno.
guys.
Really good.
Boys.
Thanks,
Have a
boys.
good weekend.